Hi everyone. My name is Calvin. I'm from the marketing team here at Rival in Reach 3. And this is Outliers. If this is the first time that you're joining us, this is a weekly event series where we bring in experts and thought leaders to discover new strategies and techniques that we can all use to engage deeper with our customers, gain richer insights, and of course, drive better business outcomes. And if this is not your first time, welcome back. Today, our topic is something that is kind of new, but also kind of controversial in the market research world. We're talking about social media recruitment. So, to start, we'll start with some definitions. What exactly is it that we're talking about when we're talking about social media recruitment? We'll touch on the pros and cons of this approach and how it complements traditional recruitment sources. Of course, we'll get tactical here and touch on everything from messaging, creating call to action, creating creative assets, that sort of thing. And then finally, we'll touch on some pitfalls to avoid. So before we get started, I would like to encourage everyone to engage with us in the next half hour or so. So please feel free to use the chat feature here on Zoom to share your thoughts, your feedback, your questions, and a bit later. Would love it if some of you could actually come online and ask your questions directly to our speakers. Our speakers today, we have Julia Morton, who is Senior Director of Customer Success at Rival Technologies. And we also have Ben Hudson, but he hasn't logged in yet. So we'll introduce him a bit later, but he's Head of Marketing at Rival Group, Inc. Hey, Julia.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'll try to fill in for Ben before he starts, but just by way of introduction. So as Calvin mentioned, I'm head of customer success at Rival. And what that means is that my team and I work directly with our clients to help them get the best out of the Rival platform and to learn and use our modern mobile methodology for connecting with customers. And also, we help clients modernize their research and build mobile communities that go beyond research and actually create brand engagements as well. And personally, I've been in the insight space for a little over a decade now in various roles. And I've had the opportunity to work with many amazing brands throughout my career and at Rival, really to help them understand their customers.
Sweet. Thanks for that intro. Now, to start, as I mentioned, it would be great if you can kind of start off with definitions. So, in many ways, the term social media recruitment is somewhat self-explanatory, but let's just make sure we're talking about the same thing. So from your perspective, Julia, how would you define social media recruitment?
Yeah, so it really just refers to the process of recruiting research participants off of social media platforms, the places where people are already spending their time. So, that could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, Discord, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. It really depends on the audience that we're looking to recruit, and really all with the goal of bringing them into a research engagement environment. Some benefits of social recruiting, just really quickly, it's a great way to complement traditional sample sources, customer lists, that kind of thing. It helps you build a feedback loop with customers in a meaningful way. And it also gives brands the ability to hear from voices that are typically underrepresented or sometimes not even heard at all in market research.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good definition, Julia. Now, one of the pushbacks that we get when we talk about social media recruitment with researchers or even marketers is that they don't really need this because they're already doing some sort of social, quote unquote, social listening. So, before we move on, maybe let's make sure we kind of address that. So what are the major differences between social media listening and what we're talking about here, which is social media recruitment / social sampling?
Yeah, so, you have to kind of think of social as being a part of a bigger suite available to you to reach the right customers. Social media listening is more of a passive activity. You're monitoring what people are saying on your various social platforms, and whether they're your followers or not, monitoring what they're saying about you. And like I said, that's not an active experience. You're not asking them those questions. You're really just gathering up kind of the attitudes and opinions that are floating out there. And conversations on social media are, they're unstructured. It's hard to get insights that you can be confident in. It tends to be the vocal minority, people who are really happy or really angry with you, who are dominating those conversations on social. And you don't really know a lot about your followers and people who are talking about your brand who might not be your followers, just kind of the basic demographics most of the time. So you don't know if they're really even your customers. So social sampling allows you to, activate your existing communities who might be already following you and invite them to a more structured research engagement to have that conversation where they can, feel free to talk to you in kind of a way that no one else can see as well. And in our case, that's through chats or chat surveys.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, personally, I'm still active on Twitter, and I know personally I would only tweet if, I'm either like super angry or super happy about the brand. Like there's really nothing in between. And so if you're trying to understand like nuances in terms of people's motivations, people's experience, definitely social media listening can kind of give you a lot of false positives, I think.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of, going back to your point about social sampling, complementing traditional sources like access panels, what are the advantages of social media recruitment over some of the more traditional approaches?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the first thing is that this tactic really opens up the possibility of talking to real people. I mean, we all know in a lot of access panels, you're kind of talking to a certain type of person, tends to be the professional survey taker a lot of the time. And let's face it, a lot of those people are there because they're motivated by rewards or incentives, getting $1 for completing a survey rather than an intrinsic need to share their feedback or because they have an affinity with your brand. So with social media recruitment, you're connecting with people where they already are, where they're spending their time. You're more likely to bring in those voices, as I mentioned before, that are typically unheard or, often underrepresented in traditional sample sources. And I mean, that said, there is still a time and a place, obviously, for panel recruitment, but social widens up your reach and gives you a chance to talk to those people who are actually engaged with your brand.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And, I would imagine just like with any other approach, this may be more appropriate for some projects and for some brands. So talk us through, what type of projects, what type of brands could benefit most from social media recruitment?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, social really has the potential to be a useful recruitment tactic for any brand or any project, since almost all types of consumers are on social media these days. But it does work best for brands that already have a following on social media. So it's an even better, really, if their customers or their followers are actually fans or they're, highly engaged with their brand or their product. So we've had really great success using our methods to recruit, especially in sports and gaming, media verticals in particular, because those are brands with fandoms. But we also do have some really amazing, CPG communities as well, where people are really there to talk about their favorite snacks. So, it often depends on that brand affinity is often the really the driver of getting somebody on your social, and same thing with recruiting them off of social to participate in research.
Yeah, so it sounds like as to your point, everyone's on social. So sometimes it takes some creativity to find those people. Like if it's a category or a shared interest, like you might be able to still get them on social, even if your brand itself is not necessarily like a Taco Bell or a Wendy's with a big social media following.
Definitely. I see Ben Hudson has joined us.
Ben, are you there?
I have, and I didn't want to interrupt because you're doing so great. And I was like, oh my God, I'm late. And they're just doing a great job. So I'm just going to be quiet.
That's all right. Well, you join us at the right time because the next question is for you. So,
perfect timing.
So as a marketer, I see social media recruitment almost just like a version of like social media advertising, right? In many ways. But there are actually crucial differences between running a typical social media campaign versus what we're trying to achieve here, right? So can you talk us through just some of the similarities between social media advertising and social media recruitment, and what are the major differences that we need to think about?
There are a couple of key differences when you're thinking about advertising on social, promoting on social, sharing your message on social, and actually using social as a channel to recruit people into your community or into your research. And that the biggest difference is sort of boils down to the way you measure success. So when as a marketer, when I'm working on a social campaign, I think about it through fairly traditional broadcast metrics. How many people looked at it? How many people saw? How many people perhaps like watched the video or watched the little clip? How many impressions did I get? And there is some desire to track conversion rates off of social, but it's not your primary focus. You're using it as largely as a broadcast medium. When you're thinking about using social for recruiting into research activities, you have a very, very specific goal in mind. So a lot of the times when we work with social teams for some big brands, the social team says, hey, you know what, we know what we're doing. We're experts in social media. We can handle this, let us do it. And there are key elements when you're creating creator for social to drive people to convert, to join a community, that really have to be, the hierarchy of information is different, and how you present those on those ads is a little bit different. So philosophically, yes, creating a meaningful, engaging, brand relevant ad, there are a lot of similarities, but when it comes down to the actual tactical pieces, what's the conversion that you want, and what's the activity that you're really trying to drive from those ads, it's really very different. And Julia is going to share a story where, you know, the difference between letting a marketing team do it, letting people like me who are like, I know everything about everything, just like all marketers, and letting someone who's an expert in social media recruitment do it is actually like there's an order of magnitude of improvement when people like Julia do it.
Yeah, so thanks for that segue, Ben. So I was going to tell a quick story. So, we were working with a major TV network, I won't name any names, who needed us to build a community of fans for them pretty quickly to give them real-time feedback on some new shows that were coming out on their channel. We met with their social media team at the beginning, and they were very confident in their ability to help us recruit fans, because they said, you know what, we have millions of followers. We do this all the time. Just leave us to it. But they did kind of rely on those methods that they typically use that Ben just alluded to, which are more aimed at, how many people saw it, how many impressions did you get, and typically don't have a call to action. And unfortunately, that kind of flopped when they tried to recruit without our guidance. They ended up getting a few dozen people from the posts that they put up. And, considering they do have millions of followers, that was pretty disappointing for them. Once they aligned with Rival's best practices for social recruiting, adjusted their strategy, we ended up getting thousands of people to join in just a matter of days. So how did we do that? We focused the ads around a really clear call to action. We want you to click here, really clearly advertised incentive as well. And, the copy itself was really a question that we knew would entice people to click, because it's something that they wanted to answer. It was a question that people wanted to answer about the show. And so rather than their, traditional strategy, which was more focused on, the content of the shows, I mean, we've all seen those kinds of ads that are just sort of reminding you, hey, watch this at 8 p.m. on Wednesdays, versus actually something that was really there to try to get people to click and entice them to answer some questions and participate in something.
Julia, can you share in round numbers the difference between when the marketing team did it and when you guys took over?
Yeah, just in terms of numbers, it was about 24 people they got from their kind of passive posts, and then we got nearly 5,000 people when we adjusted the strategy, and that really only took us both efforts were a couple of days, but it made a huge difference to them, and that was really the seed of their community right there.
So just to emphasize, Julia, was it the call to action that was changing the call to action that was most impactful in that case?
I think it was a combination of things. There was no call to action in their initial posts, which, is a bit of a miss. And I think they don't really think that way, because they're not necessarily trying to get people to go somewhere. They're just trying to make sure they're aware of the shows. Obviously the incentive as well. And then, for me, I think one of the big pieces, which I'll talk about in a moment, is the experience for people. So, you're not taking them from a dynamic social environment into what is often a flat survey experience, a little bit different with Rival.
Yeah. Okay, so let's segue into that. Let's talk about some of the do's. So, when you're talking to clients, or maybe even to social media teams about social media recruitment, just give us some of the top tips, or some of the recurring best practices that you usually share with them.
Yeah, I think there's a few kind of general things to keep in mind. So one is, especially for research teams, engaging with the social media team early, getting them on board with the plan. And often we do that by kind of sharing some of the benefits for them, giving them an opportunity to ask their social audience some questions, learn a little bit more about their followers beyond what they get, from the analytics that you get on social platforms, and kind of also get away from the noise of the channel. The other thing is adapting the creative to the specific channel you're recruiting from. Obviously, each platform has its own vibe. A video on TikTok has a really different feel than, a Facebook ad, and we really wouldn't use both platforms to recruit the same type of person either. We also, we definitely try many different variations of our creative. This kind of allows the ad platforms to show different alternatives and offer the best creative to your audience. And we do a lot of experimentation to find what works. One of the big things that I don't think is a surprise to anybody is really to leverage paid efforts. So, ads and boosted posts, organic posts are just not enough, unfortunately. The way that the algorithms work, they favor what is going to earn them money. And that's, something with some budget behind it. It's organic posts have kind of fallen to the wayside the more the algorithms favor ads. And also, making sure that the survey experience matches the brand experience. I think this is really key. You can't have, a really cool ad on Instagram or TikTok or something, and then send somebody into a really flat, boring survey that maybe doesn't look so great on mobile, as many of them don't. On the Rival platform, our chats are pretty fun. They're dynamic, and they actually feel like a continuation of that brand experience. They don't really feel like you're leaving social. They're not a departure from that. It's kind of a very natural transition as well.
Yeah, that point about paid and organic. I mean, I work in marketing, so unfortunately that rings true. Like it's in most of these platforms, it's paid to play these days. And so yeah, definitely you need that. Now, just as a follow-up question, Julia, how much budget do we need to set up for?
It depends on the target. I mean, it really will be kind of similar to when you're purchasing sample, as people might be used to, when the incidence rate affects the cost, and the type of person you're trying to find affects that as well. We've done a campaigns that can be anywhere from just a couple of $1,000s to, we might be spending quite a bit more than that to recruit a large community over time. So it really depends on the target.
Right. Yeah, so my last question here is regarding some don'ts. Tell us some of the things that we absolutely need to avoid.
Yeah, so I'd say the first thing is, don't send people into a flat traditional survey. Chats are dynamic, kind of in the same way that social media is, as I mentioned, and you don't want to take them out of that headspace the way you might with a traditional survey. So that means don't start with a whole bunch of demo questions. Don't start by asking for their email address. You want to really think about the chat engagement as a conversation. So, imagine you were meeting somebody at a party. You wouldn't immediately be like, "Hi, nice to meet you. How many people live in your household? How much income do you make? What's your marital status?" That's not really how conversations work, and that's not how surveys should work either. We wouldn't want to start, we would never start a survey that way. We really encourage making it fun. Also try to tie it into the ads themselves. So often our ads will have a question, something a little bit, enticing to get people to click. The first question in the chat should be that question. You're not taking them from that to, "Hi, what's your email address?" You're taking them from that to, "Here, now you get to answer that question." So really it's about keeping it short and fun and focused as well. And the other thing as well, I think, is avoiding taking people out of the social media experience. For our platform, it works seamlessly right in the UI of most social apps. So rather than sending somebody off to an app store to download something, our chats will use the built-in browser that exists in every social platform right on your phone, and you're answering your questions right in there. You're not going somewhere else, so it's really easy for them to answer the chat, and then as soon as they're done, to go right back to their scrolling.
Great, thanks, Julia. Now, if you guys have any questions, feel free to share them on Zoom here. But in the meantime, I'll ask a question, Julia. regarding one of the ways to also utilize social media for recruitment is through influencers, right? So
Mhm.
for instance, we've done studies, where we partnered with like an Fortnite influencer. So can you talk to us a little bit about that aspect of this? So first and foremost, like how do you even find those influencers? How do you work with them to make sure that they understand what you're trying to do? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, influencers can be a really great way to tap into an audience that the brand themselves might not have access to. I mean, the Fortnite example is a great one because, obviously Fortnite has their own followers on their own social, but then there's people like, the influencer we worked with, who's a streamer, somebody who does, plays games live on YouTube and Twitch and has an audience of people that are there specifically to talk to him about that game. So engaging with that type of person allows you to tap into that audience. And to find influencers, I mean, it can depend a little bit on the brand, but some brands already are working with influencers who are already people who are active on social, who already have an audience in that arena that they want to reach. And there are also many for us. I mean, we've reached out directly to people right on social and who we found ourselves and said, hey, would you post something for us to recruit? And then there's also many companies that are basically talent managers of influencers. So if you need something really specific, you can go through them and find the kind of person that you need. It works really well. I mean, we work with some gaming clients as well who, they have people who are super fans who already are engaged and who already have an audience of people that they're talking to about, their favorite esports team or whatever it is, and tapping into those people and having them bring in their audience just, widens the voice of who we can reach as well.
Great. Everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I'll just keep on asking here. I do have a question. Maybe it's more for Ben, but Julia mentioned the fact that you need to make sure that the experience is kind of seamless on the social network. So instead of like asking them to download an app, you're actually putting the chat or the survey right within that experience. So can you? I would like your thoughts a little bit on. This is a bit of a tangential topic, I guess, but like let's talk a little bit about mobile survey apps. What are the pros and cons, and why is it so? Why does it make more sense to like have the experience right there?
Yeah, when it comes to survey apps, there's sort of my personal opinion on making people download an app to complete surveys is really you're using that app to facilitate incentives. It's not really about creating a great experience for the respondent. It's not really about making sure that you're talking to the right people at the right time. It's really about making sure that you can feed them incentives and they can get their points as quickly as possible. And so you get into this world that we used to see in our old shop where you're really competing against professional survey takers. And there's articles out there around, how much money people can make answering surveys consistently. And it's an astonishing amount of money. So if I was in charge of a product line or a brand, I would be very cautious of the kind of data that you get from those from an app-based survey, because you got to think about what the motivation is for someone who's joining one of those things and what the motivation for providing that opportunity is. When it comes to layering in a survey as part of the overall brand experience, Andrew Reed, who is the group CEO and the CEO of Rival Tech, talks about every touch point with a customer is a branded touch point, is a branded experience, and is an opportunity to extend or re-entrench loyalty, advocacy, likelihood to recommend. And that includes the survey experience. So if you can engage somebody in a social environment, make the discovery process feel like a natural extension of that experience, and then let them go back to what they were doing, you're meeting those expectations, and you're fulfilling the conventions that exist sort of in chat and so in chat-based culture and in social culture. We're not sort of raising a big red flag, jumping in front of somebody and pulling them out of the experience that they want, and then sort of being like, thanks very much, turns out you're not the person we're looking for, good luck doing whatever you were doing. So it's really about the motivation of the people participating and the quality of the experience that you're trying to provide. Did I miss
Great.
something there, Julia?
No, I think you covered it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is that, mobile app fatigue is real. Like, I don't want another app on my phone. Like,
Yeah,
I
that's a
think
huge
that,
piece for sure. Yeah. I
so
mean,
if you really want people to participate, an app is probably not the answer.
Yeah, and I see we have a question in the comments. So Ronald's asking, what age cohorts do you find respond to social media? Is it mainly younger audiences? So I would say it really depends on the social media platform that you're using. I mean, we all know that, our parents' generation are on Facebook, and that's a great way to reach them in an older demographic versus, if you're going after Gen Zs, probably want to be on TikTok and Snapchat because that's where they're spending their time. So it's less about who you want to reach and more about where you want to reach them, because it's really all about finding people in the places where, they're already spending their time.
Great.
That makes sense, because yesterday the world kind of went to sleep, right? When Facebook and everything went down and everyone went flocking to LinkedIn and Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And TikTok, maybe. Julia, I'm just curious as well, in terms of benchmarking, if you were doing a typical social media recruitment campaign, like what type of response rates and completion rates would you expect?
So in terms of response rates, I mean, that's not something we can measure because it's more about how many people, that's more about after the fact once we get people in there, how they're responding. But, the typical conversion rate just in general is typically less than 1% off of social media. So that sounds really low, I know, but when you're working with brands with millions of followers, it ends up being not that low. Or if you're going after a specific category of person, there's millions and millions of people out there who might want to talk about a particular brand. So it's all about finding them in the right place.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. I think unless anyone has last minute questions here, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, Julia, and thanks, Ben, for joining us. And of course, we'll share the recording with people who are here and who registered beforehand. So hopefully you guys can join us next week when we talk to Bala Rajan about how COVID is changing qual research. So that's it. Thanks, everyone. See you
thank
next
you,
week.
everyone. Thanks, Julia. Thanks, Calvin. Thanks, everyone out there.